Hello, this is Michael Beverly with AMS AdWorks. I am part of a management team for authors that would like somebody else to do their Amazon advertising. That's all we specialize in. And in our history banks, we have literally hundreds of millions of impressions and a lot of data. And this helps us see the problems and solutions that can help with nearly every genre and in most situations. The talk I'd like to give today is called Top Mistakes Indie Authors Make with Amazon Advertising. I see a lot of mistakes in the dashboards of clients that I take on from previous work, and I do see most of the mistakes I see are evident on the dashboard when I see things that pop up on the carousel, and I can just tell that the person doing it is experimenting and probably making a lot of mistakes. So the goal of today is to go over a few of what I consider the biggest mistakes people make. The first one is not understanding if they should be advertising in the first place. This is a big problem for a lot of people of thinking that ads can sell books when ads don't actually sell books. They drive traffic. The product page in the book sells the books. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Number two is going to be not understanding how the competition and the market work. There's a lot of misconceptions about how the algos work or how the environment works, and a misunderstanding sometimes of what other authors are doing. Third, I want to talk about the metrics involved in advertising and how a lot of people don't understand what they mean and or what they should be, and whether or not their program is in the right place. And then the final thing is not understanding why book quality, even with great ads, even with a great marketing program, why book quality really matters and the misconceptions about that. So going back to the first topic is not understanding if they should be advertising in the first place. So this, I think, could perhaps be the most helpful thing I'm going to talk about in trying to get across the idea that sometimes you're not ready to advertise. And you'll notice if you go on the boards or Facebook groups and you talk to people, there'll be a lot of times where people will say, advertising doesn't work, or it doesn't work for me, or it's just not working. And then you come to find out that maybe there's a reason it didn't work for them, and that's not necessarily universal for everybody. So the first thing to understand with AMS, now keep in mind I'm talking about AMS advertising only here. That's what our company specializes in, and that's where our experience is. I'm not talking about other platforms which can be entirely different. For the Amazon advertising pay-per-click, the series is one of the most important things you can have, a deep series. What we've found is that if you don't have a series that's deep enough to sustain the cost of the ads, you can't bid high enough and aggressively enough to get any volume that matters. Now, I'm not talking about somebody that could possibly do ads that are set with budgets of $2 or $5 a day, and maybe spending $30 to $100 a month, and they're getting data and experimenting and maybe making a little bit of money back and maybe getting some readers. I'm not talking about that. What we do as a company is we scale and we work on getting as much volume as we can that's profitable. And so when most people go into advertising, the point that they want, of course, is to make a return. So aside from those small programs, the one mistake that people make is they try to advertise when they don't have enough product. So a single book or a short series, a standalone, will almost always fail in Amazon advertising. And again, by fail, I mean it won't make any money. Now, if you're trying to get data, if you want to know what the CTR is and those kind of things, I'm not saying that some testing isn't a valuable spend of money. But in general, if you try to advertise a single book or a trilogy or a short series, 4 or 5 books, what typically happens is in order to get any traction at all, you have to bid high enough to compete in the market that you spend more money acquiring that customer than they are worth to you. Now, there is, of course, the downstream effect, and these customers you get today might be worth money to you 5 years from now as your career builds, but it's simply poor business to dump a lot of money at a negative return in the hope that 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, you'll have a deep series and you'll be making tons of money. Things change. The environment changes. The metrics change. Readers' tastes change. Books age. New books are always the hottest thing that's selling. So in an ideal situation, your first book won't be losing too much money. Now, in some cases with Kindle Unlimited and sales, you can actually recoup a positive return right away, and then the rest of the series down the road is gravy. But these are very special circumstances. If you're starting off with ads, generally speaking, if you look at the big ad players in the game, and if you go through the carousel, you'll see who those people are. They constantly show up on your lock screens, the carousels, the product display ads. Those people spend a lot of money, and you simply can't do what they're doing unless you have the product they have. So, to reiterate this, you must have a decent amount of product in order for the ads to work in a profitable way. And the easiest way to look at this is, imagine if you were selling something like a TV set. You would not spend $500 in ad costs to sell a $400 TV set. And the reason's obvious, because people don't buy TVs every day. You wouldn't be able to sustain that kind of loss. With books, however, people that buy book 1 in a series, if they like it, they'll read book 2. So downstream income becomes very important, and this is why a deep series makes Amazon very profitable, where a short series makes it iffy, and a very short series or a standalone almost always makes it negative. Finally, the last thing that people that don't understand and shouldn't be advertising is when they don't understand the right budgets, bids, placements, metadata, and whether their cover and their blurbs are good. Now, some of those things you only find out through testing, and that is a good use of money if you have enough product to develop a program. However, it's apparent that many people get into the ad game trying to see if they can sell books, and perhaps they're even trying to gain data, where it's obvious that the cover's not up to par or the blurb's not up to par. Like I don't even need to see the data. I can just look at it and say this is wrong for the genre. It's not at a place where you're putting your best foot forward. And when you're investing a lot of money to either get data or make a profit, or both preferably, you need to have those things in place to begin with. So understanding what type of budgets you should set, what type of bids you should do, where your placement and what your metadata should be are all things that you should be fully aware of if you're going to get into the game of advertising. As an aside, one of the things that our company does is we do that for people. We know what kind of budgets and bids, and we can see problems with covers, blurbs, and so forth. So if somebody has a really big library and they're in a position to hire a management team and not so they can spend their time writing, then a company like ourselves would be a good fit. But for most people in the marketplace, they're not there yet. And if you're going to advertise, it really pays to understand all the metrics the best that you can. Now, all right, moving on to the next thing, not understanding how competition and the market work. This is something that it doesn't always make sense when you first think about it, but what you're doing when you're advertising is you're asking Amazon to give you space on their website in order to put an advertisement which you hope is going to sell your product. You are competing for that space against somebody else that has the same agenda, which is why there's a bid process. Now, one of the ways to understand this a little bit easier is to imagine that Amazon, that we'll take a category like thrillers. Imagine that Amazon had one ad space per day for a thriller book. That's it. You get one spot. And to further simplify this example, imagine there's 2 thriller writers in the entire universe, you and somebody else. Okay, so, and you both have one book, and you both have priced your book at $5. And let's just further imagine you're both in Kindle Unlimited, so Everything is the same except what you're going to bid. So the question is you get to bid on this one space that Amazon is offering in that day. What will you bid? So let's imagine that you decide you're going to test the waters and you're going to bid 10 cents. Your competition, the other author, is going to bid 11 cents. If not on day one, he's going to get there really fast. Because why? Well, at 11 cents, presumably, if both of your products are good, he's going to, or she's going to make money off of that. Well, what will happen is you're going to now bid 12 cents, and so on. When this hits equilibrium for one of you, like maybe you're getting up to 50 cents a click, and you realize that it's costing you 10 clicks to make that $5 sale, and of course you're getting only 70% of that. And so you're losing money. So immediately, unless you're just rich and you want to throw a lot of money out there, you're going to stop and you're going to lower your bid. Now your competitor out there is going to be in the same boat as you. But imagine that all of a sudden they alter their cover and they're getting they're getting more conversion. They've made their blur better and their cover better, and now they're getting 8 clicks to get a sale. So they can outbid you. So what I'm trying to explain here is that sometimes people don't understand why the bid pricing is how it works on Amazon. So it's really important to look at it from both your perspective and the perspective of the person that's bidding for you. Now, I do realize that there's thousands of spaces and there's thousands of writers, but the analogy still works if you look at it as if there's just you and somebody else in one spot. Now, how does Amazon look at this? Well, I contend that if Amazon sees that one of these authors now has a book too. Now, there's some contention about exactly how deep the algos go, but there might be a correlation and causation issue here that doesn't matter, and that is that I contend Amazon will favor the 2-book series, and it may not matter. It may be the readers favor the 2-book series. We know from our data that the longer the series is, the higher the click rates and the conversion for book ones tend to be, all things being equal. Reason being is readers love series. So what happens in this imaginary scenario where there's only 1 click per day for thrillers and your competitor just released book 2? The first thing that happens is he can outbid you. And the only way you can outbid him is if you're willing to take a loss. And essentially you'd be hemorrhaging money until you go broke. And then he would then be able to lower his price until somebody else came back in the market. Now, if you look at the way the ad space is sold on Amazon, if you follow it all, you'll notice certain names, whether it's Nick Webb in science fiction or Michael Grumley or Mark Dawson or L.T. Ryan. The big players are spending a lot of money and they're getting a lot of eyeballs in space. And the reason they can continue to outbid people has to do with a few factors. One, when things are going really well, you can get better placement cheaper. And 2, when you have the series that backs up your first sale, in other words, your first sale is actually at a loss or maybe break even or very small ROI, you know, because you know readers that like your book go to book 2, you know there's money coming, so you can just continue to outbid everybody. Now, the reality, of course, is that there's more than 1 spot and there's more than 1 click, but the dynamic works the same. So, for instance, imagine there's 10 spots and imagine that there's 11 authors. So there's 11 thriller authors in the whole universe in this analogy, and there's 10 spots a day. Well, the same dynamic happens. Everybody starts bidding. The top dog, let's say somebody has a 20-book series with amazing read-through. He or she can afford to outbid everybody, obviously, and get the top spot. Now, getting the top spot on the carousel isn't necessarily the most cost-effective. But whether you look at it as the page 1, if you consider page 1 as 1 spot, or a product display just below the blurb of the target that you're going for, the analogy still works. So what happens? The top 10 bidders right off the bat will take the top 10 spots, and number 11 is out in the cold. Now, this essentially happens almost Almost exactly. It's not a pure example because Amazon will sometimes run the carousels out to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pages deep. But let's be realistic. Who clicks through 30 or 40 pages of ads on a carousel? Like almost nobody. I'm not saying it never happens, and I'm not saying you can't get an 8-cent click, but it's rare and you can't scale that. So on the analogy of the 10, if imagine there's only 10 clicks, the 11th person is not getting any visibility. So typically what they do, and this goes back to a big beginner mistake, is they throw more money. We saw this happen with lock screens in January 2019, this year, when lock screens became available to AMS. Everybody just went a little bit crazy. They were all fighting for that spot, and people were just losing money. And you would read on the boards, hey, lock screens don't work. Well, it wasn't that they don't work. It's they don't work if people are bidding too much, obviously. That's one of the mistakes, going back to my analogy, is person 11 who's now out in the cold, not getting visibility, will often decide to raise their price. What happens is they end up taking up some magical thinking that something different or wonderful will happen to them, or they've overestimated the value of that reader. And so they start bidding more, and they shove number 10 into obscurity, and then number 10 goes through the same sort of emotional crisis. Like, I'm not selling books, I'm not getting visibility, and so that they now overbid. And so what happens is you have these little battles between each space, and the person who bids too much ends up getting out of the market eventually because they just can't compete. But what they've done is they've forced everybody else to pay more money. So who wins in that, of course, is Amazon. Now, I'm not decrying the free market of that system. It's the best for providing as fair of a playing field as you can. And in the end, it ends up helping the customers the most because they tend to get shown products that they're most likely to like. So moving on to the next step. So we've talked about whether you really, asking yourself, am I really ready to advertise? Is everything right? And do I really understand the competition? Do I understand when I bid X, whatever it is, it's 20 cents or $1, what am I trying to accomplish? And what are the other people that are fighting for that space? What are they trying to accomplish? The next step is not understanding the metrics involved. That's number 3 on my list of big mistakes people make. I was talking to a client who had worked with somebody who had never talked to him about the importance of CTR. And I asked him, well, you do realize that if your CTR is lower than average, that means that your cover has a problem likely. Now, CTR can be affected by things other than cover, such as reviews. If you have 4 reviews and you're going to get somebody with 4,000 reviews, obviously you're going to lose, regardless of the cover. But for most part, the cover itself is the ad. That's what people emotionally click on and they see. So in this particular instance, we did some experimentation and changed the cover and got a better CTR. But what I realized at that time in talking to other people is most people have never even considered A/B testing covers, and most people don't really think about how important it is for the algorithms to see a good CTR in order to get you the best placement, best pricing, and more impressions. And the reason Amazon has it set up that way is because they assume if readers are clicking that's a good thing, like they're being satisfied. Now, they also take in conversion, but the conversion doesn't happen until after the click. So for CTR, it's mostly the cover. And if you don't understand what a good CTR is, you're going to not know whether your cover is working right. And this is one of the things that's helpful with an agency like what we run at AMS AdWorks is we know what the averages are in the genres. This is difficult if you're running the ads on yourself, but I highly recommend understanding that the best you can. Talk to other people who are advertising in your genre and see if you can't get a consensus on what the range is that's good, as opposed to just saying, well, 1 in 1,000 is what I've read online and just using that as a base in general, because it's not good enough for knowing your own genre. The other thing is conversion. Now, this is a huge thing because to really succeed in Amazon, in the Amazon environment, you need both a decent series and Kindle Unlimited. Those that don't have Kindle Unlimited and that are wide face a very heavy toll when they go to AMS advertising. I'm not saying that it can't work, but I will say that it's very difficult because you're bidding against people that are getting 60-70% of their revenue from KU, and the KU downloads count towards ranking, which also feed into the algos. So if you look at all the top 100 lists for subgenres and you look at the top advertisers, they're almost all in Kindle Unlimited. This should be a very clear sign to you that there is a reason why. Now, when you're trying to figure out conversion, so one of the things that we do in managing accounts is we look at the conversion rate just on the dashboard for sales as a way to measure growth up or down against the author's own metrics. So it's more of a, is it better or worse? It's a binary question. It isn't so much like what's the actual conversion. Now, if you go out there and read about different conversions rates, you'll often hear, hey, 1 in 10 is great, but in order to get this, you have to convert your KU page reads into a download. And this becomes a lot of guesswork because Amazon doesn't tell us how many actual downloads you got. You have to sort of extrapolate that from the ranking. So it gets a little bit tricky. However, as long as you're using the same method and comparing apples to apples, you'll know. So the question then becomes, am I doing better or worse? Did say if I change a blurb and I'm looking at the conversion, however you do it, if you do it the same exact way and you see an improvement or a worsening, then you'll know what your change did. The value of a reader is another huge mistake people make and don't calculate properly. So I'm not going to get into how to do that. There's lots of good material out in the boards or in the web. You can find how to find out how to do the math. But my advice here is to make sure you have an accurate assessment, and keep in mind when you're trying to advertise into new genres or into wider genres to see how far you can go, you're not going to know the exact read-through for some months because your very core base whale readers, if let's say you're doing a niche genre, like you're doing lit RPG harem or reverse harem, and you kind of know, once you get a reader and they like your stuff and they read through it. Well, if you're trying to advertise out into the broader sci-fi fantasy group, the read-through is not going to be as high because obviously you're getting people that are trying you and not everybody's going to like it. So it's important to make an accurate and reasonable estimation and be conservative on what a reader is actually worth. And I don't mean like 5 years from now. I mean in the near immediate future, so that you can bid appropriately. Now, once you know your conversion rate, your KU numbers for your book one, and you know, okay, I'm getting back X amount of money, then you can sort of make an estimation of how much above that you can bid if you feel somewhat confident about your read-through rate. What happens is a lot of times is people aren't honest with themselves, and the big mistake they make is they don't accurately assess the value of that reader. Now, it can also work the other way. You can be too conservative and forget that you have a good read-through and you have a very long series, and you bid too low because you're worried you're not seeing a high return like on day one. So that's the other mistake. But that mistake happens a lot less than the other mistake, which is people just bid too much, they spend too much money, and then after they've wasted thousands of dollars, they realize ads don't work, of course, as opposed to saying, no, I did something wrong. So knowing how much your readers cost, the value of a reader, the cost to acquire a reader, which requires doing some math and digging in there and seeing what am I paying per click on average, how many clicks is it taking to get a reader that actually reads the book, so I'm getting paid in KU, or I'm getting that reader going on to book two, like what is it getting back, and then understanding the KU effect, assuming you're in KU, like the cost to go from book one to book two is essentially free for those readers. So if you're not getting good KU money on book two, book three, and beyond, then sometimes you have to go back and look, why is this reader stopping? Like, that's a product problem. If the readers are going through at a rate that's somewhat consistent, then you can make an evaluation of the cost of that reader. And in those cases, when you're pretty when you're pretty sure about what's happening and you have the bankroll to test a little bit, it's fine to be aggressive in C, as long as you're keeping good data and you're not just spending money frivolously. Then the question becomes, am I making money? Well, yes, continue on doing this path. If I'm not, then I adjust. So going on to the book quality, and this is one that's really, really difficult. This is a real difficult one. I heard someone speaking the other day that was talking about ads saying, the most important thing is the cover, then the blurb, then the book quality. Well, this is true if you're just looking about the effectiveness of your ad. So let's say you have a book one in a 10-book series, and your cover's great, your CTR is really high, and your blurb's great, and you're getting good conversion. Now, sometimes this can be a disaster. Why? Well, because book quality matters. If you have the best ad, the best cover, the best blurb, and you're getting great conversions, but those readers aren't reading the book in KU thoroughly and buying book two, or the people that purchase aren't purchasing book two, you're actually in the worst possible situation. Why? Because you're going to you're just going to pay a ton of money for clicks, because Amazon will gladly take your money, and what will happen is you won't get the downstream money and you'll lose. Now, I also believe, and it's hard to know if this is exactly how the algos are programmed, but I also believe that Amazon will tend to favor other ads cheaper if they're getting more revenue overall. Like the downstream income, I believe, has an effect on how the algos work. Now, there's no way to prove that. There's no way, unless you're in Amazon, of course. But it may not matter. There just may be a correlation and I'm making a mistake. I'm making a causation mistake. But even if that's true, it doesn't matter, because if you're not making money because you're getting tons of clicks and everybody loves the product page and your ads are doing great, if you're not getting the read through, you're going to pay more than you're getting back, because there's no way you can be in the top spots on Amazon at an immediate positive ROI, with very rare exceptions. Now, there are some exceptions out there. There are a few people that break the rules. If you see an ad out there that's showing up on the top spot and it's constant, and it has 10,000 reviews, and the ad copy says, a major producer, Quentin Tarantino just bought the rights to this. Well, our 20th Century Fox is developing this for a film, or this is about to be a series on Netflix. Those are anomalies, and of course the rules don't quite apply there. But for most people, the ads that they do for book one will be lucky to be even. They need book two money. They need KU read through to pay for the ads. So quality, from my perspective, quality is the king here. Quality is the most important. Now, of course, it's true if your cover is terrible and your blurb is terrible, you might not get enough traction for Amazon to continue to serve your ads, even if you've written the best book in the universe. But generally speaking, if your covers and blurb are at least in the average range and you're getting some impressions, if the quality is good and people are reading through the series, you will generate enough revenue to continue to advertise at a certain level. Now, that level will be set by the number of readers that appeal to your book. If you're writing cozy mysteries with a cat lead detective, this will be a lot smaller of an audience than a book that's similar to a Jason Bourne, Jack Reacher type book. Keeping that in mind, the audience size also generally means less competition. So it tends to even out, but it's helpful to keep in mind you can't get as many impressions if you're in a smaller niche. There just aren't available. So the most important thing, I think, if you're going to advertise effectively, is to have good product and a lot of it. Now, if you have great product and it's just a standalone, the ads almost for certainly are going to cost you more than they're worth. If you have great ads and you have poor read-through, the ads will cost you more than it's worth. If you have a deep read-through at a rate that'll sustain the ad program, you can keep generating money from your revenue back into that. Now, this, of course, is sad for those people that started off in 2011, 2012, 2013, who are getting tons of organic love. and Amazon was making some people very, very wealthy without having to pay for any marketing at all. In some cases are very small amounts of marketing. Things that work then don't work now. If you try to advertise a free book, you will most likely lose. If you try to advertise a 99-cent book aggressively, the same thing tends to happen. You tend to spend more money than it's worth. So to reiterate and to wrap up here, the top mistakes indies make, I think the very first one is advertising when they shouldn't be. So if you're going to get into the advertising, or if you've tried it in the past and it's failed, it might simply be that you're just not ready. Your product's not ready. You don't have a deep enough series. The quality's not there. Your blurbs and your covers aren't up to par. So that's the first thing to know. Number two is to know the competition in the market, to understand how the market works, so you can understand what it is when you're setting your budgets and your bids, what you're actually trying to accomplish. Study the carousel, study the product display ads, the placement. Understand what the people who are doing, say, banner ads protecting their territory, what are they doing and why aren't you? And of course, some of this has to do with the evolving nature of whether Amazon's letting people into AA or not, which is a complete other topic. However, when I say understand the competition, I mean understand what everyone else is doing. Most people don't do that, and they get lost in questions of why, not understanding why things work. Finally, understand the metrics. So this is a big mistake people make, is they don't bother to understand every metric. You want to understand what CTR, what it means, but more importantly, what is it? What's a good CTR for my subgenre? What's a good conversion rate for my subgenre? And what's a good conversion rate overall? And how do you properly calculate this in a way that helps you compare against yourself? The cost of a reader, the effects of KU, these are all things you need to understand. And then finally, to cap it all off, is book quality. If you're not writing the best books, now I want to make sure that I'm very clear on this. I'm not saying you're writing literature and you're taking 2 years to write a book. The quality has to do with, are you meeting reader expectations? In other words, you're giving them a good entertainment value. And of course, it's edited and formatted correctly so that the readers don't throw the book reader against the wall or just quit. Those are like the bare minimums to get into the market. The next step is it really, really catching readers? Are the hooks good? Are they wanting to read book 2 after book 1? Those all things go back to quality, and the quality will ultimately affect the ads, whether it's through the algorithms or whether through it's simply the behavior of your competitors. Because I can tell you with absolute certainty, if you have a competitor for the same ad space as you with a long series which has good read-through, that person can outbid you every day by a considerable margin and still make good money. And anyone that's a savvy businessman will be doing that. And you'll be very frustrated because you just can't get visibility. And when you jack your bid prices up to get that visibility, you end up losing money. And then at the end of the day, when you spent your money, you'll say ads don't work. Ads can work, but everything needs to be in line. So I hope this is helpful. Again, I am Michael Beverly with AMS AdWorks. We do ad management for Amazon ads only for authors. We get editor status on the dashboards of our clients, and we set up the ads. We daily monitor them. We report feedback on cover or blurb issues if we see them, or metadata issues. And that's the business that we do. And I hope this talk was very helpful. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.